Un momento de atención.
Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, the Congress is about to commence now. So, please, it is a great honor for us to introduce to you José Luis Ábalos, who is the Secretary of Organization of the Socialist Party in Spain and Minister of Public Works of Spain. Pedro Sánchez government, the socialist government, Partido Socialista de Obrero Español. Good afternoon. Dear brothers and sisters, as Secretary of Organization of the Partido Socialista de Obrero Español, it is a pleasure, but it's also a pleasure for me as Minister of Spain. I'm delighted to bid you a very cordial welcome to this session. I'm delighted to be a part of the home team, and I'm also delighted to see that these sessions coincide with this bit of a spring break that we have in Spain. The weather is with us. We now have to do our utmost to ensure that we focus ambitiously, work hard, enthusiastically, do our best. We are committed, we are engaged, we believe in progress, and we should turn this Congress into the platform for the elections scheduled to take place from May 23 to 26. We have a wonderful manifesto which is going to help us really be prepared. Our proposals, our commitment allow us to prove that social democracy is now, today, more necessary than ever before in Europe. We know how much work has been poured into this, the workers, men and women all, the Socialist Party of Europe, the Socialist Party of Spain. As I say, they worked very hard. And thank you then. You have got the machinery up and running so that all of us leave even further engaged to the values that all of us defend. So let us work hard for the progressive Europe we want, because 435 million Europeans, men and women, have their eyes upon us. Insofar as we can mobilize progressive Europeans and encourage everyone to vote in May, this Congress today, the Congress that we are hereby inaugurating, will be a success. The campaign begins now. Dear friends, there is no time to lose. There is no excuse. We must not stop still. The idea that we've defended, what we have been defending for so long, a united Europe, a committed Europe, a Europe that defends the freedom of peoples, that defends the freedom of its men and women, committed to the environment, to equality, to the principles of tolerance, respect, solidarity, welcome, equality, and justice. Well, it's all at risk. Dear friends, there is no time to lose. A perfect storm is now threatening Europe. We can cower in the face of this threat, and we can hope for the silver lining to be visible. We can wait to see what happens, what is left over of this Europe we love and cherish after the storm. Or we can roll up our sleeves and forever tackle and take on the storm, the thunder, the lightning that converge in this perfect storm. And I talk about the gallows of confusion. We see how some have worked spuriously to ensure that there is a misdiagnosis of events European over the past 30 years. And I talk about the typhoons of involution because for practically 1 decade we had seen how nationalisms and far-right movements come out of the caverns of history. For some time now, we've seen how this far-right populism in fact intoxicates liberal and conservative parties Europe over. Allow me a few minutes and I will think out loud. After the Second World War, democracies achieved a balance between the principles of equality and freedom. As of the 1950s, social democracy and, to a certain degree, Christian democracy made it possible and desirable to achieve a market capitalism. The premise was that the state could and would participate, if necessary, to defend healthcare and education, social benefits, some state mechanisms designed for redistribution of wealth. In a nutshell, the state would and should guarantee that the system be trustworthy. So, in a nutshell, welfare states appeared in Western Europe, in the United States of America, in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But now, that social contract which linked together the peoples of Europe and different generations of Europeans, joining them, as I say, in a single common project, is subject to threat. The implosion of the Soviet bloc as of '89, the triumphalism of neoliberal, neoconservative regimes, think Reagan and Thatcher, led some to talk about the end of history. The problem is, the end of history, defended gleefully by those who defend free market, inoculated the virus of sadness, of despair, and had some think that deregulation would be the only alternative. In the face of this, we see the results are terrible and huge. Social democracy was exhausted, and it was not abetted by the fact that accepting a market economy would have social costs. This was not accepted, and some costs in social terms could be borne always. The problem is there is no social cost that does not necessarily imply a lessening of rights. This new ideology defended and propagated ideologies as something of the past, ideologies as something that was not successful. A different era had begun. Technocrats would substitute politicians in the administration of general interests and of the public body. In economic terms, the era of the technocrats led to the progressive dismantling of public entities and a deregulation as single alternative. This ultra-liberal fast food only served, as we have seen in Europe and the world over, to weaken the response of the state in times of crisis. In ideological terms, the era of technocrats led us to avoid an ideology emptiness based on the absolute absence of recognized values. In Spain, we can see this. A consequence of this sacrifice of ideologies was the appearance of leaders and parties who defended the political center as a kind of a Panamanian flag under which to proceed towards political success. At the end of the day, and after changing tack on a multiple series of occasions, these groups have proven to not be consistent, to not be truly valid, only as hangers-on of other parties. In fact, in the face of the first political challenge, they have come apart. We see this very clearly. Those who defended the center as their natural bailiwick have had to abandon their comfort zone. It is clear now that that purported lack of an ideological pedigree, which can be identified, actually shadowed a consanguinity with the sociological far right. Spain and Europe are a part of the same political reality. We are part and parcel of the same supranational structure, and we've been subject to the same crises. We have taken on the same challenges. We respond, therefore, to the same historical challenge. So the only possible political reaction to the consequences of the Great Recession are to link the economy with savage capitalism and assume that nothing can happen and nothing can be done about the far right, xenophobia, racism, nationalism, negationist machismo. Nothing can be done, in a nutshell, in the face of far right populism. Brexit is the most glaring issue, of course, but it's not the only one. The scenario definitely is one that raises concern. In France, in Italy, in the UK, in Austria, in Germany, and in Spain, Vox with the People's Party and Ciudadanos, all of these political parties respond to the same phenomenon. The European project is now challenged by this reactionary tsunami, and we social democrats have to fight the battle. In Spain, we do it at the head of the government. Never before had a government done so many things in Spain in such little time and in such difficult circumstances. We have our job employment plan, which has resulted in over 50,000 jobs, decent jobs. We've grown by 22% minimum wages. We protect autonomous workers. We have fostered measures for environmental transition. We have done away with taxes on sunlight, and we have committed to fighting poverty. We have a robust job creation scheme with rates similar to those that we had before the crisis. We have rebuilt the welfare state. We have recovered universal health care. Pensions are more generous than they were before. We have seen how resources grow to fight child poverty. We fight gender inequality, and I am proud to be a member of a government which has most women in the world. And there is a parliamentary mandate regarding our legislation on historical memory to exhume the remains of Francisco Franco from the Valley of the Fallen. The right isn't happy. Some say so openly, others hide behind the expense. But is there a price to be put? Can we not accept that there is dignification? Think of Antonio Machado. Today we commemorate 80 years since his passing in Collioure in France. He had to flee Spain. After these 9 months, we have achieved everything that we set forth to do. The right lied to citizens. The right insulted us. The right poisoned coexistence. They reached all kinds of agreements with the far right in Andalusia. They write manifestos that are chock full of falsehoods. The most backward-looking group ever since the times of Franco. And they say openly that they will give them political power so that rights can be reduced. The Europe, the Spain we want is inclusive. It protects minorities and it defends the rights of women. Which is why Frans Timmermans is absolutely right when he says that only a social democratic victory in European elections will guarantee a free, fair, and sustainable society for the peoples of Europe. He is right to insist on saying that these are not any elections. It is the soul of Europe that is at stake. And frankly, I'm delighted to see how things will get started on April 28 in Spain. The general elections must serve as a counterbalance so that all European Democrats see that all of us together, men and women, can stop these reactionary forces. It's very clear. The right, unchained and unleashed, brings this to mind in an ongoing manner. So, my friends, being a lover of Europe, as defined after World War II, increasingly calls for a defense of social democracy in the face of a reactionary approach. We vote, but we have to defend our ideas on the street, at home, at school, at work. We have to defend a Europe and a Spain that are progressive both. Let's do it logically, and let's do it ideologically. Let's work together in unison. Thank you very much, and welcome to the Spain we love and want. And I leave you now with Achim Post, Secretary General of the PES.
Good afternoon, comrades, colleagues, activists, friends, guests, journalists. José Luis, I'm honored that you are the host, that we are here in Madrid, in a big city, in Spain, in a big country, hosted by PSOE, a really great party and sister party. Thank you for that. And I'm very happy that so many are here in this room. I can't introduce everybody. I would like to, but perhaps I have no time. But I will start with some strong women. First of all, Cristina Narbona, President of PSOE. Irache Garcia, First Vice President of PES. And Zita Gomay, PES Women President. And the President of FEPS, our foundation, Maria Rodriguez. But comrades, we are gender balanced, so I guess we have some men here. So the first is Udo Bullmann, our leader of the S&D group. Sergei Stanishev, PES President. And last but not least, our common candidate, the Spitzenkandidat, Franz Timmermans. Welcome, Franz. I guess all of you feel it, smell it, perhaps know it, that we are not living in ordinary times, but in extraordinary times. And so some of us visited Bernabeu today. You know it exactly in football, when there's a semi-final or final. You know it sometimes in politics, not always. But now, I guess, nearly everybody is knowing that we have challenges which we have never before. So, looking to Spain, we have the question if in 65 days, when I counted right, if in 65 days we will have a government built out of a conservative, right-wing bloc of the past, or if we could continue with the progressive socialist politics of Pedro Sánchez. And looking to Europe, we have to answer the question, if we have a Europe of nationalists, which is divided and weak, or if we will have a Europe which is united and strong under the leadership of Franz Timmermans. And looking to the world, we have to decide if in the next 5 years, some of us will look to Washington, others will look to Moscow, and the rest perhaps to Beijing. Or if we all together build a self-confident, sustainable, fair and free Europe. I'm in favor of the second, colleagues and comrades. And if we want all of us to give the right answer, I guess it's clear that we will deliver a campaign as never before, a campaign with Franz Timmermans, a campaign for Franz Timmermans, and finally a campaign for the new President of the European Commission, Franz Timmermans from Europe. And I'm proud to say that the presidency of PES today made the first step. We decided we will chair this conference, and this conference will be chaired by Irache Garcia, Francisco Andre and Beatriz Corredor. So you are chairing this conference, but you are not coming to the stage at first. At first to the stage we will have Beatriz and Yannick. Please come on and open the floor. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Du quoi?
All workers should be able to live on their wages. It's time to increase salaries and fight social dumping. That's why we will legislate against the fraud of letterbox companies. We want a budget for the Eurozone for more investment and to support those hit by reforms. Austerity is bad social policy. We believe in workers' rights and we believe in rules. When we lead Europe, no one will work without a contract. Everyone working in one sector in one country will be covered by the same minimum standards. We support collective bargaining. We will create European rules to ensure that workers in platform jobs are protected just like all other workers. Because workers' rights are more important to us than apps. We believe in well-funded welfare states, so digital giants will be taxed where they generate their profits. Our manifesto is about workers' rights and equality. For a fair, free and sustainable Europe.
So hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to my hometown, welcome to Madrid, welcome to Spain. And let's begin this first panel. Thank you to the PES for the confidence that have put on us to chair this panel. And we are going to listen to a number of speakers on the topic of the new contract for new social contract for Europe, for this fair, free and sustainable Europe we want. And for the introduction of this panel, we want to give the floor to Maria João Rodrigues. She is the president of the FEPS, and she is a member of the parliament from the Socialist Party in Portugal. Please, Maria João, join us to make this introduction.
Dear comrades, dear friends, we are in a historical Congress with a battle for Spain and a battle for Europe. And we are inspired by the idea proposed by Pedro Sanchez on a new social contract. And you know that the heart of this social contract, our key ambition is to reset fairness in Europe. This is our central purpose for the battle to come. We know that we are dealing with a lot of social inequalities, of unfairness, and we know this is undermining all the citizens' support to the European project. We want to come with powerful initiatives to stop this. And let me tell you that we could launch something important due to our family, our prime ministers, our leaders in Gothenburg, together with our parliamentarians and our social partners and civil society, together, we could bring about something big, which is now called the European Pillar of Social Rights. And let me tell you, when we launched this, some were saying, well, this is just a decoration. No, we are turning this into real action. We are able and we approved important European laws recently in the European Parliament and in the Council, which should change our working conditions. We want everybody, whatever the job, whatever the sector, to have a decent labor contract and to have full access to social protection. And this law will benefit 300 million of workers in Europe. This is powerful, and you should know that we voted this law last week in the European Parliament. This is a big victory we got. We also could adopt for the first time a real update of the law on work-life balance, supporting men and women in their daily life and making sure that we have really childcare, carers leave, and this will be the road to have a real child guarantee. Another achievement we did last week by voting the new social fund. But now we have a problem, which is the following. Yes, we are moving with many important instruments to change the social reality in Europe, but we are confronted with conservatives and with national populists who are against this. So let me tell you something. We need now to go to the European elections and to tell to our citizens that they need to come to vote, to push for this, to turn this into reality, and to bring again fairness to Europe. That's why we need to go to the European elections with a big flagship, which is this European Pillar of Social Rights. We count on you, we start this work, and now this is my pleasure to introduce a very, very special panel which shows how far we have leading actors everywhere pushing for social fairness in Europe. So this is my pleasure now to introduce the members of the panel. And you can be sure that these names, you'll recognize all of them as leading actors of our common cause to bring back social fairness to Europe.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much, Maria. Hello, everybody. Hello, comrades. It's a pleasure to be here with you in Madrid and speaking about a fair Europe means also speaking about a social Europe, means discussing about workers' rights, means discussing about working people. And for introducing the debate, we have the pleasure to invite as a speaker the Secretary General of ETUC, the European Trade Union Confederation, Luca Visentini. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. We are working all the time together. You are a guest, honorable guest of our network of Minister of Unemployment and Social Affairs that you attend regularly, and we are very glad to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Yannick. And I don't feel to be a guest here. I'm a brother of all of you, I mean. Compañeras y compañeros, comrades and friends of the PES, it's really a great pleasure to be here with you today to bring you the greetings of the 45 million workers we represent in the European Union as the European Trade Union Confederation. And it's not only a formal pleasure because I'm looking at your slogans, and they are exactly the same slogans that we are going to push for during the campaign for the European elections and also in the Congress that the European Trade Union Confederation will hold in Vienna just a few days before the European elections. I'm really glad to see that a new social contract for Europe is the core slogan that you have put at the core of your discussion of this Congress. This is exactly what we are also going to build up together with you, together with France, together with all those that will concur to this strategy to create a new Europe that serves the interest of people, of citizens, of companies, of workers, of the real people. Because the problem we are facing at the moment in Europe is exactly that the social contract we had built up in decades of social cohesion, of social market economy, of single market, of unity of the European continent, this social contract has been broken. It has been broken because all of us, unfortunately, we have made a lot of mistakes. We have made mistakes in addressing the economic crisis. We have made mistakes in addressing the globalization phenomena. We have made these mistakes in addressing the climate change, the digitalization. We have not been able to cope with the challenges. So now is really time to recognize that we need to change. We need to change if we want to change Europe. Because there is the social contract broken behind nationalism, behind xenophobia, behind lack of trust, a lack of hope among people regarding the future. It's not migration, it's not defense, it's not border control. This is only a symptom of a deeper disease that we have to address if we want to change Europe. And the disease is exactly the fact that people have lost their hope in the future. They don't see the possibility to have a decent job for themselves, for their families and children. They don't see the possibility to have a fair salary, to have fair working conditions, decent social protection, housing, healthcare, education and training, to have the possibility not to be left behind if they are affected by climate change and digitalization. So if we, the progressive forces of the European Union, if we are not able to build up a better future for people, there is no chance for Europe to be united and to be great in the future. This is exactly what we have to invest about. And then I'm really reassured by going through the manifesto that we are going to discuss during these 2 days and that is going to be approved. I'm really reassured that we are absolutely on the same page, that we want to base our strategy on investment, on job creation, quality job creation, in changing the macroeconomic model that we have had so far, not only sticking to rules, but first of all putting the economy at the service of people's interest, making sure that we can improve the working conditions and the salaries of people, because it's not more possible to tell our friends in the eastern countries that the promise that was given at the beginning of the convergence and enlargement process cannot be kept any longer. It's no more possible to have a minimum wage in Bulgaria that is 10 times lower than the minimum wage we can have in France or Germany. This is absolutely unacceptable. And it's not possible to accept that for children in Germany, in France, in Spain, in Sweden, but also in Portugal, in Slovakia, in Hungary, the level of education and training is not the same. The level of healthcare and health and safety protection is not the same. The level of unemployment benefits is not the same. All this has to be the same. We need to restart a process of virtuous and upward convergence in the European Union to make sure that we can really give the same better future to all our citizens. This is the challenge for the future. If we are able to address this challenge, then it will be very easy to win the elections, and it will be very easy to build up a different Europe for the people we want to represent. Climate change, digitalization, great transformations are taking place, and we need also to rebuild up a social model in the European Union that can really make sure that the Europe that protects, that we repeat all the time as a slogan, can become really a reality for common people in the streets, in the workplaces, in the society, everywhere, in each and every European country. This is the challenge. But there is also another challenge, is of course what Maria said. We need to build up an European pillar of social rights, a social contract, making sure that workers' rights and social rights have the same level of importance as economic freedoms, making sure that the sustainable development goals of the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations are properly implemented also within the European Union. It's not only about Africa and Asia, it's about us, making sure that these goals are also our goals. But there is, behind all that, another and last but not least great challenge, and is democracy. I know how much France invests on democracy, not only on speeches, but on action as the first Vice President of the European Commission. Well, friends, democracy is really under attack. And it's not only what is going on in the different countries of the European Union, it's also what is going to happen in the next European Parliament. Can we make sure that we will convince the EPP, the Popular Party in Europe, not to go for an alliance with the far right, but to build up a democratic alliance for the next Commission and the next European Parliament? This is the crucial point. This is the crucial point. Because of course, we have to deliver a battle in Hungary against Orban and in other countries to prevent that fascism is back on track, in our societies. But it's also about Europe. It's also about what will be the majority that will run the next European Parliament and the next European Commission. You know, the temptation among the ranks of the EPP is there. There is the temptation of repeating what is going on in Andalusia and in other regions and countries of the European Union. We need to make sure that they will stick to democracy, that we will have an alliance that, regardless of the different point of views that can exist among us, among the liberals, among the popular, among the Greens, etc., but we all can come together building up a cordon sanitaire to make sure that the far right will never get into power in the European Union. This is really the real challenge, and we can win together. Go on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Luca, for your passion and for explaining us so. I want now to give the floor for speaking about inequality to Brendan Howlin. Brendan Howlin has been leader of the Irish Labour Party since 2016, and during his time in the Irish Parliament has served as Minister of the Environment, Minister of Health, and Minister of Public Expenditure and Reform, as well as Chair of the Parliament itself. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair. Comrades, it's my great pleasure to be in the wonderful city of Madrid and to share this platform with passionate socialists. I'd like to preface my own remarks by saying that Ireland's people greatly appreciate the solidarity shown by all of the European Union member states in relation to Brexit. We passionately wish the United Kingdom would think again and stay within the European family. But if the UK must depart, we cannot allow that departure to reverse 20 years of peace on the island of Ireland, which is the legacy of Irish and British Labour parties, including people like Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, among many others. We in the Irish Labour Party are grateful for the solidarity of all our comrades in the Party of European Socialists for understanding and embracing the unique circumstances of the Irish border and for continuing to support the common EU position that there can never again be a hard border on the island of Ireland. But not all borders are on a map. Societies too can be divided and cut up by invisible lines and invisible distinctions based on economic inequality. Economic inequality is rightly a major and growing public concern. As socialists, we're no strangers to the concept of class inequality and inequality between workers and business owners. Economic inequality is fueled by a situation where the share of national income drawn into capital has greatly increased in recent times, while the share going to workers through wages and benefits has diminished. Workers need higher wages, and our PES manifesto makes that point strongly. But there are new dimensions to economic inequality. Traditional secure employment is under threat by new forms of temporary and precarious contracts. Financialization in all our economies has concentrated too much power in financial institutions and banks. Artificial intelligence and other technologies permit more jobs to be displaced, and the spread of that change is accelerating. The challenge of climate change, as has been mentioned, requires many changes in all our societies to reduce harmful emissions, which in some instance will displace workers. We must meet these challenges. We must meet them head on. We can reverse these trends, decrease income depreciation and wealth inequality in every state in Europe. We need to put inequality front and centre in all our concerns so that the people of Europe know that the Party of European Socialists and all our member parties are determined to secure a Europe of equality and fairness. As socialists, we need to be at the forefront of imagining the future of work and ensuring that decent work with decent pay is available to all. With Labour in government in my own country during a critical period of financial crisis, we were able to increase the national minimum wage, and we were the only austerity country to actually strengthen workers' protection and collective bargaining rights. So even in the worst of times, with socialists close to the levers of power, we can protect workers. Our manifesto for the European elections calls for a new direction for Europe. Socialist parties will leave no person behind, no community behind. We will reverse the inequalities of income and wealth across Europe, and we will strengthen workers' rights. We are determined to combat discrimination, to eliminate gender pay inequality, to eliminate poverty, especially child poverty, and tighten the control of workers' rights. We will lower the pay gap in member states, not by a race to the bottom, but by ensuring that every member state enjoys the highest quality of work and wages. So, in short, we have a vision for Europe, a vision for Europe for all, an open, tolerant, free from war Europe, free from discrimination, where everybody's rights are respected. With 3 months now, comrades, to share our European vision with all the peoples of Europe and to convince them that this imagined change can actually happen. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. Now, our next speaker, it's my pleasure to invite from PES Portugal, the young head of the list of PES Portugal for the European election, just freshly nominated at the last week Congress of PES Portugal. He has been active in European politics for a very long time. He was previously Minister of Social Security and also Minister of Planification and Investment. It's a good friend of us, very active in the network of the PES for cohesion. So thank you, Pedro. Pedro Marques, the floor is yours.
Muchísimas gracias, Beatriz.
Thank you very much, Beatrice and Yannick, dear comrades, socialists of Spain and Europe.
José Luis, dear friends, comrades, it is so inspiring to be here in Madrid with socialists and democrats from all over Europe to discuss our program, our proposals for the next European Parliament elections. In such challenging times, this meeting is for the utmost importance, not only for us, but for the future of Europe. Europe is at the crossroads, and all the democrats in Europe have to take a stand. When we see extreme right populist and nationalist parties threatening democracies, we have to stand up and say, no more extremism in Europe. And when we see traditional right-wing parties, including those belonging to the EPP, adopting the extremist agenda, we have to stand up and say, no more racism, no more discrimination, no more sexism, and no more intolerance in Europe. And when we see right-wing parties establishing alliances with extreme right populists and nationalists just to reach power, as we just saw in Spain, in Andalusia, where Popular Party and Ciudadanos became allies of Vox, we must stand up and say to people from all over Europe that they have to stand up with us. They have to stand up with us and fight back. Democracy cannot be taken for granted. People's lives are at stake. We will continue the good fight, the fight for a free and democratic Europe, the fight for fairness, for gender equality, for sustainability. The choices, comrades, are clear in Europe, as they are here in Spain. The socialists and the democrats, we carry the hope that can make the European project get back on its rails. To our friends from PSOE, let me tell you that our hearts and hopes are with you. Our hearts and hopes are with you to defend democracy, to defend a plural society, a Europe for all, an inclusive society that does not hesitate in helping those in need. So let us put our hands together for Pedro Sanchez, for all the Spanish socialists. In Spain, in Portugal, all over Europe, the socialists and the democrats are ready for the European elections and to fight for a fair, free and sustainable Europe. Because you know, my friends, we only have one planet, and so that's also one of our causes. We have to save it and keep it healthy for the next generations. And the lives of migrants and refugees cannot be put at a halt through the excitations of Europe. Closing borders, yes, that's right. Closing borders, rejecting the refugees or leaving them adrift in the Mediterranean is not an acceptable solution. Europe needs a fair, common asylum and migration policy based on shared responsibility and solidarity among member states. And what about the pay gap between women and men? It's not an issue from the past. Today, in the 21st century, the pay gap is still 16%. So women have to work 2 additional months each year to receive the same amount as men. We will not wait for 100 years on the pay gap to close and to end by itself. We, the socialists, the Democrats, we are committed to gender equality. And let me say proudly that yesterday in Portugal, a new law came into force to ensure that companies comply with equal pay. I am proud of, yes, that's right. Yes. And I am also proud to announce that the European Parliament candidates list that I am honored to lead in Portugal will also assure gender equality. Yes, that's right, that will happen in Portugal. Our statement is clear, friends. The Socialists and Democrats are the only ones that can bring hope to Europe again. We open our arms to Europe, but the Europe we embrace is the Europe for the people, the Europe for the many and not for the few. We defend the social rights, and we want to establish a new social contract with the European citizens. So it is time, comrades and friends. Let's fight the good fight. Thank you so much. Have the best Congress. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Pedro. Thank you very much. Don't you know that we have the best candidates? I know that the Progressive family is going to go farther in these elections with this kind of leader, with this passion. So very, very, very well. Thank you, Pedro. And now I want to give the floor to talk on a very important, very big issue, that is employment. And the speaker is going to be Nicolas Smith. Nicolas is a member of the Luxembourg Socialist Workers' Party and has served as a minister in several Luxembourg governments. As Minister for Employment, he chaired the network of PES employment ministers for all our governments. Thank you. Welcome, Nicolas. The floor is yours.
Dear friends, dear comrades, we have listened to the previous speakers, and we all know that the upcoming elections are of utmost importance for Europe and for all its citizens. But this vote is certainly a vote for or against Europe. It's a vote against those who want to destroy the European project, those who have brought nationalism, xenophobia, racism into European policies and politics. They are a danger and they are a threat against the Europe of prosperity and of peace. And we will fight them. We will really fight them. But it's not only that. This vote, this election is also a vote on policies, on the right policies, a vote on how the future of Europe will be designed. We want to reduce inequalities. We want to promote a fair and just transition, ecological and technological. We want policies for the future, for the young. We want a Europe which is more democratic, more ecological, more social. We want sustainable equality. What we socialists and social democrats are fighting for is well-being for everyone. This is what the new social contract for Europe is all about. A contract for social, ecological progress. We should be bold and courageous. What Europe needs now is a social union. That's a union of strong welfare states, sharing the same social goals, giving good social protection to everybody, and promoting social investments. What is needed to relaunch the European project is not only more economic convergence, and certainly we need more economic convergence, but also more upward social convergence. That's the right answer to the deep crisis, to the deep social crisis which is existing in Europe. And this is what our manifesto proposes. This is what we really want to achieve during the next 5 years. Indeed, we have a good basis, the European Pillar for Social Rights. We have now to translate its 20 principles and rights into concrete actions, programs, and legislation where needed. Our political group, and I have to thank Maria João, has really shaped this pillar for social rights. It would not be the same without the socialist group in the European Parliament, and it would not be the same without the perseverance of Maria João in the European Parliament. Now we have to fight for its translation, we have to fight for its implementation. We need a social action plan to turn the social pillar into concrete policies and binding rules that strengthen welfare systems and help us to organize fair and just transitions, environmental as well as digital. It's not enough to talk about growth. We need inclusive and sustainable growth. We need inclusive prosperity. Millions of Europeans, 1 child out of 4, are at risk of or in poverty. This is unacceptable in the richest continent in the world. Poverty is producing exclusion. It is largely the cause of so many young people without any perspective in their lives. The level of needs, those young people who are not in education, not in employment, not in training, has to be reduced. The child guarantee, and we imposed finally the child guarantee recently in the Parliament within the multi-annual financial framework, gives, as well as the youth guarantee, are very important steps, but they can only produce real effects, real results, if there are the necessary financial resources. So the next step is really to launch a European anti-poverty plan, and not vague promises, but real objectives and commitments to reduce the number of poor people in Europe. Employment is changing due to digitalization and automation. We have to prepare employees to these big transformations. Skilling, reskilling and upskilling have to become rights of each worker. They are the solution for the employment for tomorrow. They are the solution also for all those workers who will lose their jobs due to automation and to digitalization. We have to make sure that the digital economy becomes an opportunity for all. Good labor rights, lifelong learning, social protection, and good working conditions for all workers independently from their statute. That's what we have to guarantee. The social dimension of the digital transition should be high on our agenda and of social dialogue. Some progress has been made recently through the directive on better conciliation between professional and private life. This has to be continued, as well as our strive for gender equality. This has already been mentioned. It is finally unbelievable that in 2019 there are still pay gaps in practically all our member states in the European Union. There are still discriminations between men and women at the working place. As my colleague just said, will we have to wait another 100 years to change that? No, it's time now to change this. Social dumping remains an issue. The directive on posting has now to be implemented, and the Labour Authority has to be instrumental in this respect. The remaining wage gaps and the problem of working poor have to be tackled urgently. That is why We are firmly committed to collective bargaining and to minimum wages that have to be living wages, permitting workers and their families to live in dignity. The first thing Antonio Costa and Pedro Sanchez have done in government is to increase significantly the minimum wage in their country, which had been reduced by the Conservatives. So, if somebody tells me that finally there are not so many differences between us and the Conservatives, this is the proof that the differences are huge, and we have to show that.
Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you.
One way on the reform of the Eurozone. We have to introduce the social pillar in the Eurozone. But certainly we have to go in the direction of a European complementary unemployment insurance mechanism. And the polls show that Europeans are not against it. Why are they not against it? They are not against it because they know that Eurozone has to be sustainable, has to be stable. Dear friends, our manifesto opens new perspectives. We are not for status quo. We are for the progress. We are for hope. We are not for fear, as the fascist or the ultra-right is. So,
Thank you, Nicolas.
together with France, we have now to fight for our ideas, for our proposals. We have to make clear that there is absolutely no alternative to a unified Europe. But there are alternatives to European policies. Our alternatives, our policies. Let's fight for them. Thank you.
Merci. Merci. Merci, Nicolas. And I have the pleasure now to invite as the next speaker, John Crombie, the leader of the SPA Belgium, who was a very successful Secretary of State for combating fraud in Belgium under Prime Minister Elio Di Rupo. John, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Good day, friends. It's great to be in Madrid. And let me, before I start on a single fairness topic, plea for more female speakers on this podium as well. And I remember we said that last year, and all the male speakers before me mean it when we say we want more equality also on this floor. So let me just make one point, another small one. We want more fairness, and in our program to the voter, the European voter, we have a major issue in fairness when it concerns taxes. And it's true, I've been Secretary of State of the fight against fraud, and in the European Parliament and in the Commission, I think our people did very, very good work. But I also think that we should tell ourselves that it's not enough. We're not nearly there. We're 10 years after the banking crisis. And when we ask for better wages, higher minimum wages, when we ask for better pensions, better health care, the right says there's no money. But 10 years after the banking crisis, the amount of concentration of wealth and the amount of fraud, tax fraud committed is still the same. So I plea that not only we put forward policy against fraud, but in all our countries to all our voters, we tell them you need social democrats to put an end to that. No friendly speak, but firmly put an end to this massive tax fraud. And we have had measures. Today, everybody can see interviews with the CEO of UBS. They got a sentence and a fine of 4.5 billion. A fine of 4.5 billion, but the stock price decreased like 2 or 3%. It's not that they're in a bad mood because they have to pay 4.5 billion. They don't accept it, this 4.5 billion. But they aggressively and actively organize this fraud. And when we speak to the voters in Europe and we tell them there is enough money, let's get it, where it exists, make that specific. Because they're asked social democrats, how will you do it? It's complex. How can you fight this massive tax fraud of multinationals, of the super rich? It never worked, but it is possible. It is possible when we ask for higher sanctions for banks and legal entities that continue to organize that. 10 years after the banking crisis, it's the big banks that organized this crisis that put so many people in poverty. 10 years after the banking crisis, they're still doing it. So why do we accept it? Why don't we ask for higher sanctions against these people that continue to organize it? And there's not going to be an economic loss. And that is, as social democrats in Europe ask for a minimum taxation of multinational firms. A minimal taxation, as the other speaker said. There's a new economy, and they will try to seek for loopholes in whatever we draft, but put a minimal taxation. And not only to support the wages of workers, but even to support small and medium enterprises that pay double the taxes of the large corporations. So let's put a European minimal taxation on large corporations without exceptions. Just pay it. Final.
Thank you, Jon. Thank you very much, Jon.
And then finally, when they say to us social democrats, it costs too much money. You have a social contract, you have a social program. I think in all of our countries it's the same. What we propose costs too much money. Well, the amount of tax fraud in Europe can pay more than twice for a social contract, making certain that all Europeans can have a decent wage, a decent life, and a decent protection. So let's do this, and let's tell our voters that we are able to do this in the next elections. Good luck to everybody, and let's do this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jon. And I would like to kindly remind the speakers that they have 3 minutes to speak. And they have a clock in front of them that is going red, red, red. Please attend the clock. So I want to give the floor now to Liviu Dragnea. That is
Dear friends, dear colleagues, I'm very glad to be here with you. And I'll start to speak in my language because I want to be sure my people from our country understand me. You'll have to...
We are here right now in order to discuss the manifest that the political manifest that the left is trying to propose for these EU elections. Now, I have read it, and I'm telling you with full conviction that this manifest, this document, will change Europe for the better. After 15 years of domination from the right, which has destroyed many values, many hopes, and many destinies, I can say that they have also destroyed the faith and the trust in the European project. And we know very well that the right anywhere in Europe is doing everything it can to block us. I believe in the European project, but we must believe it with strongness and with faith and tell people the manner in which the European right has committed these acts against Europe. Using the tools of austerity, manipulation, and, just like it's the case in Romania, using the strength institution and forces in the state. We must come out together on this topic. In Romania, social democracy has 125 years of existence. We are strong because we remained faithful to our values. Now, in the last couple of years, I've heard colleagues speaking about the minimum wage, speaking about increasing pensions, thanks to our government, which has submitted all efforts in order to improve the day-to-day life of our citizens, the minimum wage in 2 years' time has been raised by more than 50%. The pensions will grow each year so that by 2020, basically no pension will be lower than the double that it was at the start of our mandate in 2017. Taking into consideration that we have lowered the taxes on citizens, the income tax and the taxes on the business environment, the people on the right side always said that cannot be done. We should not increase pensions. We should not increase wages because there's no money for it. Well, we have proven that a social democratic party can decrease taxes, increase salaries, increase pensions, and give back hope to the youth. It wasn't easy. And it won't be from now on. The stake in this EMP election process is huge. We are speaking about the future of Europe. We are speaking about my future and your future, of our children's future and our parents' future. Together with our sister parties in Europe, the Social Democrats must re-establish the justice. We must build a new social contract for Europe and for all European citizens. I'm absolutely convinced that we can do that. The Social Democratic Party in Romania will win the elections. And I'm convinced that PSOE will win the elections in Spain. Now, I'm convinced that Romanians in Spain have great expectations from you and you will deliver. And I'm convinced you will get their vote. Now, in order for that to take place, in order to reach all of these objectives and goals, we must fight until the end for the values we believe in. Defending democracy, defending the citizens' rights, of a system that is just and transparent. These are the main paths and lines for which we must fight together. Today, I've had a very good and very interesting discussion with Sergey, Franz, and Udo, and we propose solutions for a better level of communication. From my side, from our side, we are fully open for that. And I hope that we will have a better level of collaboration for that. Also, we must re-establish justice. We must correct the errors and the abuses that were committed in the past. We must prove to the right that we are better than them and that we are more united when it comes to their attacks on us. Anywhere in Europe, the right wants to see us divided. I believe we must not fall in that trap. The European Union needs a profound change that only the social democracy can deliver. It is a change that just us, the people here in this hall, and our colleagues in Europe, we are the ones that can deliver it. We need a Europe that is closer to the people. We need a Europe where each citizen feels that he has equal rights. We must not let anybody left behind. We, just as it was previously mentioned, we make policies for the many. We are on the right side, on the good side of things. And no matter what the consequences will be, we must fight till the end for the values we believe in. It's time to make the change now, together.
The next speaker, I'm glad to welcome now as the next speaker from Italy, Chiatuscia Marini. Please, Chiatuscia, welcome. Was looking for you, President of the PES Group in the Committee of Region and President of the Umbria region. Thank you, Chiatuscia.
Compañeras y compañeros.
Dear brothers and sisters, I am delighted to be here today with all of you in this country in which the word equality still has a meaning.
Dear friends, I would like to illustrate the importance of a European policy which has highly contributed in the past to achieve better equality and fairness, and that we shall continue to defend as a socialist. It is the European policy with the most visible action of the European Union in our cities and regions. It is the European policy who has mostly supported the local and the regional authorities in a time of a crisis, bringing forward investment with a real impact for the life of people, of many European citizens, reducing regional disparities, creating jobs in our cities, supporting social innovation and social inclusion, addressing climate change and migration. I am talking about the European cohesion policy, a strong cohesion policy that shows the European Union added value to our people in our cities and regions through concrete projects is needed more than ever at a time when populism and the Euroscepticism are on the rise. It is needed more than ever as an expression of European solidarity to overcome the economic, social, territorial divide by providing every citizen, wherever they live in Europe, with a concrete opportunity to experience the advantages of our European Union. As the president of an Italian region hit by earthquake some years ago, I can witness that our communities were concretely supported by European Union in the reconstruction process. Every mayor and the president of regions in Europe can be a witness of this. This is why we, progressives of Europe, are determined to assure that the next European cohesion policy shall remain accessible to all European regions, shall reach all citizens, no matter where they live, shall make sure that the green and the digital transitions are just. This radically different Europe must have a strong European budget to be able to deliver. It's time we put our money where our mouth is. Europe needs appropriate financial resources to assure cohesion, solidarity between people and territories, from north and south of Europe and from east to west of Europe. We shall fight as a socialist for better living standards and for the elimination of inequalities across the European Union, across the regions of Europe. No territory and no people left behind in the European Union. We can build a fair, free, sustainable Europe if we build a fair, free, sustainable cities and regions where the people live every day. France, we stand by you for a Europe of equality and fairness, with many women and with many young people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So, and last but not least, I want to welcome our next and last speaker, Lodewijk Asscher. Is the leader of the Dutch Labour Party and former Deputy Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Please, Lodewijk, come to the floor. He's going to talk about work digitalization.
Dear friends, let me tell you a short story. This morning, as I took a taxi in my hometown Amsterdam to the airport to come to Madrid, the driver asked me where you're heading. So I told him, I'm going to Madrid to the PES meeting. He said, well, okay, politics. And then he said, are you going to take up Uber? I said, yes, sir. I believe we need to take up big tech companies who don't pay their drivers. Henry Ford once said that every worker should be able to afford their own car. Now every Uber driver should be able to use Uber as a consumer. And I said, oh yeah, right. Are you going to take up Airbnb because my son can find a place to live? And I said, yes, sir. That's what we're going to do. Those companies have to pay taxes, be responsible. They have to be part of society or they will face revolts. We're going to change them. We're going to regulate them. We're going to tax them. And I found out I was actually shouting in the back of the car. So then he asked me, what kind of job will my children have in the future? And I slowed down a minute and I said, well, that's for us to decide. That's what elections are for. There's a big choice to be made. Are we going to leave it up to the markets, to laissez-faire politics, or are we going to make our own choices here in Europe, in the Netherlands? Do we still believe in a more social project, a more social contract? Fair work, decent working times, time for your family. Not just to work for the stock owners, for the stock markets, but to work for a decent living, for you and for your family and for your children. And I wanted to tell him about the great moment in the 19th century when capitalism was forcing a new social movement that brought us social democracy, that brought us the welfare state. And I said, this is our second great moment. Social democracy is to deliver once again. And that's what this election is about. In the Netherlands, in Spain, all over Europe. And then we got to the airport. And when I got my jacket and I waved goodbye, rushing to get in time here to be with you in this meeting, the driver asked me to convey two things. First, he said, yes, I don't trust politics, but tell them in Madrid, I will vote for Frans Timmermans. And then he said, after they've given you a big round of applause, tell them the second thing. And that is that Ajax Amsterdam will kick out Real Madrid in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. So thank you very much to all the speakers. Thank you very much for you, for this kind audience. And just for the next panel, I was just to welcome on the stage to chair it, Francisco André, PES Vice President and National Secretary for International Affairs from PES Portugal, and Mariah Lefebvre, Deputy Secretary General of the PES. Thank you very much for your patience, and have a good Congress.
This is the 21st century. Gender discrimination and gender violence and sexual harassment are unacceptable. It's time to win this fight once and for all. Women are consistently paid less all around Europe. That's why we want a Europe-wide gender pay gap reduction target. It must be binding and it must entail a 2% country-by-country yearly reduction. We need more women in top positions. Quota systems must be established in all political and economic bodies. Active work-life balance policies are indispensable for women and men. We need more women in technical professions, in science and research. We want a binding EU gender equality strategy. Being a socialist means being a feminist. Women's rights are not negotiable. Our manifesto focuses on gender equality for a fair, free and sustainable Europe.
Good afternoon, dear comrades and friends. We go to the second section of our manifesto on democracy, rule of law, gender and LGBT rights. And for this panel, we have a number of speakers, and we will start with Juan Fernando López Aguilar. Juan Fernando is currently an MEP from PSOE. former Minister of Justice. And Juan Fernando will speak to us on privacy, freedom, and the rule of law. And since we are discussing rules, we are going to be very strict with the rules of the 3 minutes per speaker. And Juan Fernando, thank you very much in advance for your comprehension.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Dear comrades and friends, it's great to be here in this huge and passionate gathering of the entire social democratic family across Europe. But as we are in Spain and we have the joy to make it to Madrid today, I'm going to speak Spanish, so there will be translation for all. No ha habido una sola intervención esta tarde aquí.
This afternoon, everyone has addressed the issue of social democracy and Europe. European Union, European Constitution are all inextricably bound, because Europe is first and foremost its social model, and we socialists have contributed historically and politically to the construct of that social model, which is a struggle for intergenerational equality, for equality between and among all persons. Everyone has the right to be equal. So we fight, we struggle to achieve equality between men and women. We fight for feminism, and we fight also for cohesion and solidarity of an interterritorial nature. But we know more as socialists. We know that Europe is values and principles, the rule of law, democratically legitimized, not any law that is legitimate in democratic terms. So there can be no rule of law without democracy, and there can be no democracy without rule of law. We are bound by the law. And we know full well that democracy is much more than what the majority says, because the majority can crush minorities. We know that there are inalienable rights, the rights of all. No, it is not the rule of the majority, period, paragraph. No, it calls for the defense of the minority and the guarantee of the opposition and respect of the diversity, fundamental rights, the fight against all manner of discrimination, the fight for inclusion, for participation by means of the establishment of a free public opinion which speaks out in democratic elections, because that is the only way that we can be at the service of society. So being a socialist means in his Europe that we are anti-fascist, always. We were anti-fascist in the 20th century, we will be anti-fascist in the 21st century. Being anti-fascist in the 21st century means that we are frontally opposed to paternalism, to machismo, to environmental denialism, populist demagogics, which by means of lies, misinformation, intoxication, fake news, and post-truth, which is another way of talking about non-truth, attempts to distort the right to a democratic process which we as socialists are mandated to avail ourselves of in order to guarantee the citizens whom we stand up for. And thus, let me be very blunt here, we are mandated now to do something crucial. It is to think in existential terms about the European Union. Think about May 26. Think about fighting for democracy against supremacist nationalism of an exclusive nature, against reactionary populism, against demagogy, against hate speech, against those who accuse minorities of the impairment of the social Europe that we socialists feel is sorely lacking and which we must restore after the elections on May 26. Dear friends, we have to begin at home in the European Union. We launched and defended Article 7 against far-right reactionary governments in Poland and Hungary. We were essential in the fight against corruption, in the demanding the protection of whistleblowers, those who cast a spotlight on corruption, of any illegal action that they be aware of. And we must ensure that the rule of law is defended in our fight against corruption. Anybody who knocks on the European Union door will know that we will not accept new members if we all commit to the rule of law, This is a must-have for any candidate. And, dear friends and colleagues, sisters and brothers, we know that there isn't much time. May 26 will be, as we say in Spanish, will be a very tough exam. We need to defend the Europe we want and love. It's never been easy. It's never been easy for us. But that is the history of a fight against injustice, a fight for equality, for the rights of men and women alike in an open and inclusive society. That is our struggle. That is what we are fighting for now. On May 26th, we will roll up our sleeves and do what we need to do, as we will do in Spain on April 28th. May 26th for the Europe we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Fernando. And now I would like to invite Karl-Heinz Lambert on the stage to speak about citizens' participation. Karl-Heinz is a very firm supporter of our movement, and he was elected president of the European Committee of the Regions in 2017, and he's also a member of the Belgian Senate for the German-speaking community. The floor is yours, Karl-Heinz. 3 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I will be very concise, very short. In the 20th century, socialists did amazing things. And if we want to be ready to meet the challenges of this century, there is one thing we need to do. We need to be closer to citizens. It's the only way, it's the only solution. And the best way to be close to citizens is to go and see where they live, in their cities, in their regions, because this is where they will make their decision, and they will decide whether our political proposals are acceptable for them and positive for them. And this is what we need to do. You know, I'm talking about very simple things. If we want to reconquer the minds and the hearts of European citizens, we need to make sure that tomorrow it's no longer possible to make money with speculation. I think that we need to do our best to make sure that those who have a job, who have a salary, should be able to live in dignity. We have to make sure that no longer 20% of the European citizens live under the poverty threshold. And we have to make sure that the future generations do not depend on their parents' wallets, but rather on their own capacities. Thank you very much.
Karl-Heinz, thank you very much for respecting so much the rules. Now, I would like to introduce you a very special guest, an amazing woman, very known in our family and movement, someone that dedicates all her life to the fight of gender equality, and a dear and special friend, I believe, for each and every single one of us in the family. Zita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. Thank you very much. Dear friends, dear comrades, special thanks for PSOE for hosting us here in Madrid and this venue. Of course, unfortunately, also in this artistic world, women still have difficulties to break through. According to the feminist activist movement, Guerrilla Girls, less than 5% exposed modern art in museums are from women. Where are we? But it is by changing attitude and thanks to women like the Guerrilla Girls and feminist movement calling for change that equality can be achieved. That is also what has been happening here in Spain. A vibrant, strong women's movement. Women are tired of being trampled, and they take the street and demand change. Cambiar juntos. To all of you, women out here, I say respect. A todas las mujeres les digo respeto.
I scream out to all women, respect. You are a source of inspiration for all of us.
Big buzz again on the upcoming International Women's Day on 8th of March together with other member states. We would like to see as much women as possible laying down their work on that day, because if women stop, the world will stop. And this is a wake-up call for Europe. Enough is enough. Basta! The same as we need to change attitudes, we also need to change our political culture. Gracias, las fuerzas Pedro Sánchez and PSOE. Here in Spain, we have a true feminist government. Feminism is driving demands for change. These demands are snowballing towards the institutional world, and we can be part of this change from the inside. It is our task as politicians and policymakers to listen, to act upon them, but also to show initiative and political will. The woman that is working full-time and that wants to start a family or needs to take off her parents should never question how she will manage the balance between work and private responsibilities. In the same way, men that want to participate in care responsibilities should not be denied their rights to parental leave. These are not individual obstacles. This is a systematic and structural one, and we Social Democrats can fight it. The clear commitment that we are setting with our manifesto is to establish a narrative for gender equality across fields and sectors and for parity in political life. What the nationalist and conservative want is clear: stagnation, austerity, division and regression, especially for women. But what we progressive want is ever clearer: a gender equality strategy that is binding, a gender equality strategy that dares to be ambitious, that sets clear goals, a strategy that can lift member states up and that is not content with the smallest common denominator. An effective strategy is one which member states take a political engagement for, and one that sets targets and objectives that we can monitor and see how member states have delivered. The gender pay gap. I'm absolutely amazed that men colleagues understood how important to close the gender pay gap. And France, dear France, I am super happy what you said in Hungary, that you want to close the gender pay gap in 5 years. So let's make it happen with the leadership of Franz Timmermans. And we did not talk about pension pay gap, which is even worse. We cannot accept that over half of women worldwide have experienced sexual harassment, or that 1 in 20 women are getting raped. Therefore, we need to do our utmost to stop all types of violence against women, and thus to implement the Istanbul Convention should not be a choice, but a must. Women should never come into a situation like our Polish sisters who are on the verge of losing their rights to make a choice over their own bodies. My body is my right. If I want to become pregnant, I can become pregnant. All women across Europe should have legal and affordable access to sexual and reproductive rights without fear, violence, or discrimination. We can realize these objectives. We have a strong common candidate, France, and a progressive agenda for Europe. Hagamos una Europa feminista.
Let's build a feminist Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sita. As always, energetic and ready to campaign. Thank you so much. And then the next speaker is going to speak on the topic of diversity. I would like to invite Camila Garfias to take the floor. She is president of Rainbow Rose and comes from Austria.
Dear comrades, compañeras y compañeros, muchas gracias por...
Thank you very much for welcoming us in this beautiful city.
On behalf of Rainbow Rose, the LGBTI network of PES. And I will make it very brief. Everything that has been said applies to LGBTI people. We are workers, we are students, we are your daughters, we are your sons. We are your neighbors. And we have the pleasure to be here in Spain, the third country to legalize equal marriage under PSOE and Zapatero. So this But equal marriage is not the end of the road. Equal marriage is just the beginning. We fight for a world where everyone can live in freedom, love in freedom, and be whoever he or she wants to be. That has to be possible, and that is possible with Europe and with states that have leaders, political leaders, that really fight for that. And that's why it's so crucial that we win these elections. But we won't win these elections if we just have the right topics, because we have the right topics. We know that. We are number one in LGBTI issues. But we need representation. We need to have LGBTI people on the stage, on the lists. We need migrants on the lists, and we need young people on the lists. And we need that too in our PES events and in our SPÖ and, sorry, because I'm from SPÖ, and in our party events. We need them to be in the program. We don't want, young people don't want to hear old men, and I'm very sorry, I don't want to be disrespectful, speak all day long. We want to be represented, and we want someone to identify with. We want the progressive Europe, and we're calling our LGBTI community to come out to vote. We're calling on our allies to come out and help us to make them see that a socialist Europe, a socialist world, is a world where we truly can live free and love whoever we want to love and be whoever we want to be, far away from any stereotypes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Camila. And now, last but not least, the President of the European Young Socialists and a dear friend of mine, João, the floor is yours to present us your young perspective.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Thank you very much, Mariah. And thank you very much, Camila, because you made it much simpler for me to come here on stage listening to you. Dear friends, dear comrades, querida compañera, querido compañero, I would just ask you for a bit of reflection of why we are here and what is the importance of YES and what is the importance of fighting for young people. When the crisis hit us the hardest in 2008 to 2009, the employment rate and the unemployment rate went up very steeply for all the population. But in the cases of young people, the unemployment rates reached to be the double or even more than the double in the majority of the countries of the EU. Child poverty and youth poverty have increased during those years. We as young people are still facing the disruptions of a system that is not just causing casual crisis, that provokes this crisis systematically. And we as young people, I said it already this morning, the first priority that we will have as young people is to fight for our future. And to fight for our future means that we need to tackle climate change. And I will come on every stage saying this on every time and every opportunity that we have. Tackle climate change and join the fight that, for example, in Belgium, young people have together organized to defend and to protect our planet. The second thing is that the majority of my generation and of our generation, of the people that are here listening very attentively, is that we are not probably ending our work lives with the same job with which we started. This means that we are going to face a lot of challenges and a lot of transformations that we need to be prepared for. And in this case, we need to make sure that education is a key factor in all of our programs, in all of our policies, making sure that we prepare young people for the transformations that they are going to face throughout their life. Every time that people talk about the European Union, they say that Erasmus and roaming are big conquers for the Europeans. And they truly are. And we have been in the forefront for defending these transformations. But have they really been beneficial for all of the population? For the people in the ghettos and in the social project neighborhoods outside of the outskirts of the cities, do they really benefit from Erasmus? Do they really have the possibility to travel and go study abroad if they don't have a good financial situation? We need to make sure that when we talk about these projects, we talk about these projects for everyone and not just the few and not just the elites. I will conclude by saying that we have been fighting for the youth guarantee, for the child guarantee. It's in the manifesto, and I'm really proud that our family has managed to put this forward. But we also need to make sure that we follow what Camilla just said. We have seen recently how the participation of women in the United States running for Congress have boosted female participation in the elections and have managed to bring women to be more active in voting and in participating in politics. This needs to happen the same with young people. There is no participation without representation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, João. Thank you, and very well in time. Very good message. Thank you. I would like to thank you for listening to this panel, and I call on the stage Irakche Kasia, the first Vice President of Party of European Socialists, and Yannick Bollet, Deputy Secretary General. Thank you.
Here we go. No, the getting.
Youth unemployment is 15% in Europe, much higher in some countries. A whole generation is struggling to find a job and a place in society. That's why we want to extend the Youth Guarantee to help them find a career path. That's why we will fight 0 hours contracts. We want all young people to fulfill their potential. We will have a reformed Erasmus+, also accessible to high school and vocational training students. We want to facilitate their access to culture through state-sponsored European culture checks. 1 in 4 children are at risk of poverty or social exclusion in Europe. Our child guarantee will make sure that every child has access to free, quality healthcare, education and childcare, to decent housing and to adequate nutrition. This is our chance to invest in the future. Our manifesto takes care of our youth. Spread the word.
Dear friends, no? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Dear friends, after this short video, we will start with the third panel. It's the last panel, but no the less important panel. It's very important to speak about our topic now, about sustainability. And I want to thank the presence of our speakers in this panel. Now we will hear from speakers Andreas Sida, who will cover the topic of sustainability. Andreas is the Deputy Chairman and currently also acting Chairman of the Social Democratic Group in the Austrian Parliament, as well as the Deputy Federal Party Chairman of SPO Austria. He has served as State Secretary of the Ministry of Financial and member of the Parliamentary Assembly at the Council of Europe. Andreas, you have the floor.
He's the head of the list.
Thank you. And dear comrades, I think it's a very inspiring Congress which we are living here in Madrid, and I think this is the best mood for our European elections. And as this is now a new contract for sustainability, I want to just shortly and quickly touch some of the issues. The one is social housing, because social housing is also the system where we, as Social Democratic, build up in our cities, where we had the chance to give to the people affordable housing. Because we think housing and how you live is not an issue for speculation or for free market society. But we also have to be clear, it is not fixed forever. Because always the European Union and the European Commission from time to time start to put pressure in order to liberalize social housing. And this is a point where we have to say hands off of our social housing system in our cities. The second issue I want to quickly touch is 125 years ago, the labor movement founded an organization which is called Nature Friends. It was founded in Austria and then became an international organization. This is showing that is the labor movement who is thinking about our conditions of living. It's the labor movement who was the first green movement on our continent. And still it is the labor movement who is tackling these issues of living conditions nowadays. And dear comrades, it is about the fundamental change which is going on. And we have to be clear, it will not be the US and Trump who is solving the problem. And it will not be the Chinese who are solving the problem. And it will not be the Russians who are solving the problem. And by the way, national idiotic ideas are also not solving this problem. So therefore, we need a policy like a CO2 tax, European-wide. We need to fight energy poorness. Also, we need a high-speed train networks over Europe in order to not fly everywhere. And we have to tackle also the tax privileges of kerosene and the benzene for the ships, because this is also not fair for the environment. And if you speak about this, also we have to be clear that we should speak also about how we eat and how our food is produced. And we have an agriculture, we need no pesticides, we need no glyphosate in our food, and therefore we need a system in Europe where we say no European subsidies for multinational agricultural companies who are poisoning our soil and our bodies. This is the time we have to do. So therefore, comrades, another last point before I put my sticker off. Fuck. Doesn't work. Anyway, so therefore the last point is about drinking. And it's not the drinking which will come maybe in half an hour. The last point is about water. We have to preserve our natural water resources. Also, and this is very important.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andreas, and we wish you really all the best for your campaign as head of the list of SPÖ in Austria. Really good luck, all the best to SPÖ for this campaign. And now I have the pleasure to call on the stage the leader of the French Socialist Party, le premier secrétaire Olivier Faure. Olivier, c'est mon plaisir de t'inviter.
Olivier, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you here on the stage to talk about a topic which is essential. It's the climate issue. The climate protection and environmental protection and the social dimension. Olivier, the floor is yours. Dear comrades, first I would like to apologize for not being a woman, because gender equality is something that we still have to make true, even here. So first, I apologize, and at the same time, I'd like to talk on behalf of the French socialists. Dear comrades, you referred to the threat in all different countries, Italy, Hungary, France, Sweden. You know, the list is long. I could also add Andalusia in Spain, where the far right is taking more and more place in people's hearts and minds. And this threat, of course, is huge. Anti-Semitism is also back in France over the last few days. The Nazi symbols are reappearing. The far right dares to do things worse day by day. So this threat, dear comrades, is going to become even more important, because the climate issue is related to the further increase of nationalism. and extremism. If our climate is changing, if we're not able to compensate for this increase in temperature, first we will have to deal with migration flows and migration policies. 1 billion men and women in the next few years will be on the roads and will lead to climate wars. The question of the Aquarius will be an anecdote. It's not 300 people who will go to the coast of Malta or Italy, but millions of men and women who will try to find a new place, a new hope. So, dear comrades, this climate issue is just in front of us, and we have to deal with it. We should also embrace this environmental issue, because social and environmental dimensions are interconnected. First, through its beneficiaries, i.e. the first victims of the climate issue are the poorest, amongst the poorest, the poor districts in our cities. The men and women who suffer the most of these issues today are workers exposed to dangerous substances. Our districts which are polluted are those who have to eat bad things because they don't have enough money to eat healthy, in a healthy way. And of course, it's also a way for us to question once again the liberal response, the liberal system. I read the manifesto and I fully agree with it. It's up to us to implement this manifesto in the different countries. How long are we going to accept free trade agreements concluded in exchange for nothing? How long are we going to accept trade agreements that do not respect the COP21 agreement? How long are we going to accept that things like water, energy be privatized? How long are we going to accept the fact that the financial dimension prevails over the climate issue? So we have to be brave. We have to dare doing things. We have to say that any investment in favor of green transition would be taken off the 3%. These are things that we have to propose, that we have to support. And finally, let me tell you a story. My youngest child is 4 years of age. In 40 years, the human activity will mainly be we have to find things to eat and to drink. And at that time, he will be younger than the age I have today. And this will be the case of your children and grandchildren. They will all question what we have done today in 2019. We have to be accountable for what we are doing. We have to say it's time, high time to change Europe, to change the world. We're not asking for the moon, but we have to protect the earth. Thank you.
Merci, Olivier. And now I will give the floor. I would like to invite Javi Lopez to the floor to speak on multilateralism. Javi Lopez is member of the European Parliament and sits on the Committee of Employment and Social Affairs, as well as the delegation to the Euro-Latin America Parliament Assembly. Javi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Irache, it's a pleasure to be here and enjoy this gathering with comrades across Europe. But take into account that we are in Madrid and we'll speak in Spanish, and because I only have 3 minutes and I will be faster speaking in Spanish. Well, I have to talk about multilateralism y explicar por qué el multilateralismo.
And explain why multilateralism is important for mankind to survive in the 21st century. Multilateralism was the 20th century achievement. We managed to coexist in order to overcome two absolutely gruesome world wars. And thus, this way of understanding the world, that is how multilateralism in Europe and the Union came forth. The favorite daughter of multilateralism is European integration. We, in the face of those who say America first, Italy first, me first, well, what we want to do is cooperate among societies, among countries, among nations, among citizens. Cooperate to fight climate change, cooperate to fight inequality, cooperate to organize a fair and redistributive globalization. And especially, we defend cooperation in the face of those who want to return to national loneliness and to those tribal and demagogic approaches and speeches. The fact is, those tribal speeches, that demagogy we've seen over the past few years, are just a mirror image. We've seen it in the UK. We saw it with Brexit, a mirage, a terrible misreality which has divided society, which has damaged the institutions, which has threatened its economy. And how to recover control? Well, no recovery. Chaos. Chaos for the UK. I, as a Catalonian, think of the many things I've heard in Catalonia. We want to cooperate to defend freedom, to be successful in our societies based on democratic principles. Thanks to Europe, that speaks with a single voice, that is integrated, that has the necessary instruments to guarantee safety and security and defense. Because this is how we can guarantee freedom. This is how we can fight fear. A United Nations that can provide solutions to the conflicts in the world. An Agenda 2030 that our Spanish government has upheld, has defended, has made its beacon the only way of building a prosperous future, a future that looks for peace and equality, especially in the face of the right in Spain, which wants to send us with Vox, with PP, and Ciudadanos to the worst years of Jose Maria Aznar's times in Spain and the war in Iraq, and sustainable partnerships with Africa, for instance, as a means to tackle a century which will see the ×2 or ×3ing of the population in Africa. And furthermore, you know, we were asked once about multilateralism when Madeleine Albright was the person in charge of foreign policy for the US. And what Madeleine Albright said, Americans don't like these long words, especially those that end in ism. Well, we European socialists, we love long words. We love complex worlds for a complex world as ours. And we love the words that end in ism. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Javi. Thank you very much, Javi. Javi Lopez. Ah, yes, Fofi. Now it's my pleasure to invite Fofi Genimata with us, the leader of PASOK. Thank you very much, Fofi, to speak on managing migration.
Comrades, dear comrades, perhaps the most important problem in these elections is the refugee problems. Someone believed that this problem was resolved next to the crisis, after the crisis of 2015. How, with a common declaration, EU, Turkey, and the Salvini-type policies? That's a big error. That's a big error. We should stand firm against the fear and the hate that persecutes even those who are fighting to save lives in the Mediterranean. The common declaration EU-Turkey that is already surpassed by the reality. The result is that the islands in the Aegean Sea have been converted in warehouses of souls. Their lives are in danger and their dignity is violated, and above all the women and the children. At the same time, the inhabitants of the islands pass very tough times. We don't have any stable, permanent state structures. We have complaints that the European funds go to partisan objectives. We can't fight the right and the national populism with this kind of policies. Our reaction has not been firm enough, because the terms of our reaction has been the Christian Democrat type of reaction. We should propose solutions on the basis of the solidarity. That's what we believe. The solution can't be given only by Greece or by Spain or by Italy all alone. All together we should fight, because it's a European Union's problem. We should stop closing our eyes before the violation of the human rights in Europe, because when we see the cynicism in the policies of the family reunification, and what we need is to defend our own principles and values. Revise the Dublin regulation. We need a unique asylum system in all the countries. We need a program for the social inclusion of all refugees in our countries, and protection of the external borders of the Union, strengthening the European border and coast guard. France has specific proposals about what should be done in Africa, so there are a lot of proposals. She stands in front of all of us. We vote for him, we trust him. Congratulations, France, for what you have done till today. The European citizens want from us, from all of us, clear solution and progressive solutions. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fofi. And now, following to the topic of migration, we will now hear from Tania Fajon on the benefits of migration. Tania Fajon is a member of the European Parliament, Vice President of the Sandy Group, and Vice Chairwoman of the Social Democrats in Slovenia. She is working very strong in our group and the European Parliament with the issue about migration. And now, Tania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Irache, dear friends, dear colleagues. Europe has always been a continent of migration, and it will always be. And we as a political family can be very proud that we care for human lives, that we care for people in need. In 2016-17, 8,000 people died in Mediterranean. We have never had a migration crisis, but we have still today a crisis of our institutions. We have a crisis of our governments that don't cooperate. In the European Parliament, we managed to adopt all the necessary legislation to have today a common, efficient migration policy that would address the difficulties with migrants and refugees. But the governments are those that don't act. The governments don't act today. They don't show the solidarity. If we keep the status quo without a Dublin reform, it would cost a year 94 billion euros, 12 billion euros for costs of lives. This is where we stand today. There is no simple and no single solution to migration and refugee crisis. But we have to act together. We have to bring back solidarity. We need a holistic approach, meaning we have to tackle with a crisis where there is a source for migrants and refugees. We have to build a common European migration asylum policy, that all countries will cooperate, that it's not only a challenge for Greece, Italy, Malta, that we don't see people dying in the Mediterranean. We have to be honest and also tell all those nationalist politicians that today manipulate, lie, fake the numbers of migrants and refugees and fear the citizens that they are wrong. And we can benefit with a proper integration, with well-managed migration. In our manifesto, we also put European Integration Fund that all local communities can apply it, and the host and the refugee communities can have benefits. Yes, integration will be a big challenge for Europe, but we have to find solutions together. And this will be a challenge for our political family, but once again, we can be proud because we take care for human lives. And that is where we stand as socialists and progressives. And Europe will always stay an attractive continent, and we can be proud of that. And also benefit with well-managed migration and people that come and will stay in our societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Tania. And now I know that all of us are waiting for our guest speaker. That is probably not necessary to make the introduction, but in any case, Josep Borrell, as you know, was President of the European Parliament between 2004 and 2007, and now he's our Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation in the Spanish government. Josep Borrell is our friend. Josep Borrell is...
Then you.
Shall I? Sorry. No. Yeah. Jutta came. Yeah, sorry. We had some technical problem without the information, but there is not any problem. Now I will give the floor to Guteland. She's a member of the European Parliament and she will speak about globalization. Thank you, Jutta, for to be here in Spain, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Comrades, friends, it's a great honor for me to stand here in front of you, and what energy it has been this afternoon to listen to the speeches. I think that with this energy we will actually make the European election a big success. I have a 6-year-old, and the other day he told me, "Mama, I don't want your job in the future." And I was thinking, oh my God, can't even convince my own son. Problem? No. You speak in front of too many people. It's too difficult, too scary. I will take my father's job. He's a police officer. That's more secure. And I feel actually today I should have had him in this conference to make him see all the joy, all the warm feelings, and how we take care of each other in our party family. He would really want to have my job in the future. And I'm here to speak today about the challenge of tomorrow, but to concentrate on the trade. And I cannot do that without speaking about fear, because I believe that the time we live in, the fear is one of the big diseases that we need to handle. People are afraid of everything. We are afraid of the situation on the internet. We are afraid of the situation with people flying, wanting to come, or being refugees wanting to come for Europe. We are afraid of the climate crisis. And of course, it's natural to be afraid in these times. We have big challenges. And we also had a situation where the politics didn't deal with it. So people actually feel that you were not there.
and there is a reason for being skeptical. But then we need to show that we will be committed. We will change that fear into hope for the future. And I take courage in all the young people of today out there in front of schools but not in them, demonstrating for the climate and a sustainable future. I believe this is something for us as a party family to take strength from and build the future on. And if I speak about what we could do for Europe to be a sustainable Europe, as mentioned earlier today, we cannot be a sustainable Europe if we don't live in a sustainable world. And the trade policy must be committed in a modern way to contribute to that sustainable world. I'm absolutely convinced that this is the challenge, but we cannot fool ourselves. We are dependent on the world to create a better situation also in Europe. The solution is not like the protectionists or the nationalists say. That would harm Europe a lot. 36 million European jobs are dependent on the trade, so we need to be aware that this is something that will create security for the citizens of Europe tomorrow, to have good trade deals with countries out in the world. But the task for us for the future, and I will conclude with that, when it comes to the trade, is that we need to make it modern and we need to make it sustainable. And we're already on that track, but we need to show the citizens that we also implement it, that we follow it the whole way. I heard earlier about the sustainable future and the importance of having the trade deals that are committed to the Paris Agreement. I could not agree more. This is one of the absolute most important message, that if we shall create a sustainable future, then our trade deals must be sustainable too. We need to implement the trade agreement in our deals with other countries. We also need, and this is the last message from me, need to make sure that we are taking the social agenda and make it also committed in our relation to the world. We already have the social pillar as well as the global development goals. So the policy is there. But we need to make it into social dialogue. And I'm very proud of the global deal and also what my Prime Minister did for that. But I believe that many of you are also committed. So let's take this global deal and make it concrete, follow it up, and make sure that the trade is something that will benefit not only the few, but all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jit. Now, yes, now we will listen our Minister, Josep Borrell. Pepe, tienes la palabra.
Buenas noches a todos.
Good evening, all. While you were introducing me, I saw a young blonde person and I wondered, what kind of a metamorphosis is this? Because that was not me. Now it is me. Thank you. I know you've had a long day. I know you've heard multiple speakers. I know there have been multiple presentations. I imagine you're all hankering for a drink and a chat. And afterwards, our candidate to the presidency will be joining us. So I am not going to take up too much of your time, dear friend Timmermans. I'm going to leave you all the time you need because I'm sure you have much more to say. So all I can do now is say hello on behalf of the government of Spain, a European-looking government who wants to build Europe and wants to contribute to the European identifying elements at a very difficult time. Very difficult. We need to be aware of the fact that these are difficult times. These are times that are marked by economic recovery, which is still suffering from the wounds inflicted over the 10-year-long crisis in a very difficult international setting, new threats, of course, to our safety and security, with the surfacing of nationalisms, a Europe that is divided north-south because of the crisis zone, the crisis of the euro rather, and the migration crisis affecting East and Western Europe. Many questions. Social democracy should be able to provide a response. So the first thing to bear in mind is that the Union was built in the belief that economy would lead to political integration. And we've seen that it is not enough. On the contrary, the economic crises have encouraged the surfacing of centrifugal tendencies in the Union. So far to date, we could say, as during the Clinton times, or years rather, it's the economy stupid. Now, we begin to say, it's the identity stupid. The identity. The return of identities that seek in the old nation state a solution to the problems set forth by changing times. And many voters who were and who should still be socialist voters now do not vote in the ideological and sociological level thinking about those specific issues. No, they look at their identity. And this has us tackling two problems which together might in fact result in a perfect storm. Many workers have lost their economic and social status, and this affects the middle classes. These are the so-called losers in globalization. And addition to that, a loss of identity which goes hand in hand with migratory problems. Italy is a clear example of these twin facts. An economy that is stagnating, massive arrivals of immigrants, ports are closed, harbors are shut, and the neighbor, in this case Spain, will have to solve the problem without being able to build a common and solidary European response. So today we have a portion of the population of old Europe which is made up of middle classes, enlightened middle classes, cosmopolitan middle classes who defend social liberalism, who defend an open economy, who defend a liberal democracy, and up to a certain point, migration, multiculturalism, and solidarity, and because at the end of the day it's good for them. But we also have a lot of persons who are holding on for dear life to a precarious job, or who have abandoned the labor market, who live worse than their parents' generation did, and who don't really have much hope in the future. This is a generation that is competing with immigrants for a job, and we see a disaggregation of the social construct. It's easy to understand how we would return to old national identities and to closed economies in the quest of a world that was and a safety and security lost. This is what we need to fight against, this tendency. We need to be aware of the fact that we cannot only build open societies if, at the same time, these societies are not cohesive. Openness must go hand in hand with cohesion. Why? Because if not, this opening is going to further loosen the social link. And that is the challenge that awaits us. Recovering lost prosperity, turning Europe into an instrument for fiscal redistribution. The new Green Deal, we talk about it, we hear about it. The new Green Deal, we have to be very careful so as to ensure that it is not a burden on the less haves, or if not, we will have social movements as we are witnessing in France. We also need to take very much into aware security issues. The United States of America, unfortunately, believe that United Europe is not an ally, but rather an odd subject, the workings of which are not fully familiar, and which raises in the new U.S. administration uncertainties, mistrusts, to the point of actually defining us as enemies. They leave us, if you will, alone upon denouncing the nuclear pact with Iran, upon denouncing the mid-range missile, creating this deep asymmetry between the NATO allies, because some of us, Europeans, are now very much exposed, whereas they, who are at a further distance, are not exposed to this threat. One of the major issues which we need to really think about as Europeans is how to grow our strategic role within NATO. And when we are told we need to spend more in defense, we need to say more. What for? To face what threats? More at the service of what strategy? The strategy which is subsidiary of the great power who looks at us out of the corner of their eye and who is not worried about our security problems. As Chancellorwoman Merkel said, the export of German cars is a threat to the national security of the USA, or a Europe that understands that it must be more capable of assuring its own defense, developing strategic capacities of a proprietary nature. A defense which cannot only be territorial in nature. It's not enough to guarantee the physical spaces. It's not enough to protect the border. No, now we have to tackle hybrid threats. Threats that involve cyber attacks, cyber hacks, fake news, that propagate anti-European movements, allies of foreign powers who try to discredit the European project. Brexit, which hovers. Anytime you talk about Europe, you talk about Brexit, is doubtless an occasion to explore new opportunities. We have to sometimes face difficulties, situations such as these, which we didn't look for or want. We need to study the possibilities that may come to the surface, and it might be a step forward to more political integration. There are avant-garde groups around the Eurozone which are willing to jointly address major problems, migration and defense. And what is for sure is that if we do not do it, if in the coming few years Europe does not do this, Europe will lose the possibility of playing an important role. The emerged and slightly decadent USA and the powerful China, which every day projects its geopolitical power over the rest of the world. We are that part of the world in which, notwithstanding everything else, we best know how to combine political freedom, economic progress, and social distribution. We are that society that has been able to join the solidary will involving all of its citizens, achieving economic progress that so far, at least, rode on the shoulders of technological creativeness, and with a peace that we owe to the European Union. We must remember our achievements. Keep them in mind. We must continue to do whatever needs to be done to ensure that young generations who believe that Europe is something that is like manna from heaven, that you don't need to fight for because there it is, fruit ready for the picking. Without it, things may change. The old demons of the past may come. We never thought we would again talk about the void that now is the Mediterranean. We never thought about the borders to the east. We didn't think it would be possible that it would come to the surface. So as Social Democrats, the time has come to encourage Europe to stay on the right tack and achieve these three assets that are so much our history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, José Borrell. Thank you, José. Thank you, José Borrell. Thank you, José, for sharing your vision, the vision that we will fight for. And now, after this very fruitful discussion, it's my pleasure to invite our common candidate, our Spitzenkandidat, Franz Timmermans, after this rich discussion on the manifesto, and to end up this very fruitful day, ready for the fight. Thank you, Franz. The floor is yours.
Buenas tardes, compañeros.
Good evening, dear comrades.
No long speech for me tonight. I'll keep that for tomorrow. And especially after the wise and thoughtful and inspiring words of Pepe Borrell, what could I add more? And saying this, somos todos europeos, somos todas europeas.
We're all European, men and women.
You were clapping a lot because a lot was said. And I was thinking, listening to all the clapping, of a story that was once told by the late, great, inspiring Robin Williams. He said at some point he was at a U2 concert in Glasgow. And at some point, Bono, with his inspiration, stood up and wanted to make a plea for more aid for Africa. And he was clapping his hands above his head. And he was shouting, "Every time I clap my hands, a child dies in Africa." And from the back of the room, a Scotsman yelled, "For God's sake, man, stop clapping!" What I'm trying to say is this: we have good plans. We come with solutions. Not much was said about Africa today. I hope to say more about that tomorrow, because I believe our destiny is linked with that continent. But I'll leave that for tomorrow. But what I take away today, after listening to all these inspiring proposals and speeches, is that what I hear wherever I go in Europe, from our opponents, from those whose only plan is to destroy the European Union, is that they have many plans to break, to destroy, to rip apart. Especially they have many plans to rewrite history, because apparently they think they own the present, and he who owns the present owns the past, and once you own the past, you can create the future, creating a false image of the past, as Orwell has said. And we should not be drawn into this false game of trying to chain people to their fears by rewriting the past. We should put all our efforts in unchaining the people from their fears by writing a future, a progressive future, a future we can believe in. If there is one thing the history of our movement shows us, only one thing it shows us, is the incredible liberating effect from removing fear from people's lives. Is the incredible liberating effect of giving people an opportunity to use their talents. It's the incredible liberating effect of creating equal rights for men and women. The incredible liberating effect of making sure that we treat everyone equally in our society, whatever their religion, whatever the color of their skin, whatever their sexual orientation, whatever their beliefs. Fear is a prison, is a cage. We should open that cage and let people out, giving them plans for the future. We should do something about the housing crisis. We should make sure that we put an end to the disgrace that in some member states there is still no minimum wage. These are very concrete projects, and you have heard them today. And yes, campaigns of hatred against us and others will continue. Yes, that is true. But with the next poster that is invented by Viktor Orban with more lies, we could say that money you spent on posters and lies, you've been spending for years, dozens and dozens of millions of euros of taxpayers' money. Couldn't you have used that money to do something about the fact that in 400 districts of Hungary there is no doctor for your citizens? Could you not have put some of that money to effect so
so that the shortage of 4,000 teachers is addressed? Pupils don't have lessons in school because there are no teachers. Should you not put that money for teachers instead of posters with lies? And perhaps it would be more graceful and more helpful to the women of your country if you would provide for daycare, if you would provide for equal pay, if you would provide for opportunity for young people in Hungary instead of seeing all these young Hungarians leave for other countries. Today, 1 out of 6 Hungarian children is born outside of Hungary. Bring them back with optimism, with positive policies. Make sure that that happens. So my friends, let me conclude on this. We've heard all the plans, and they're very good. Now we need to make sure that people see that they are good and they vote for us in the European election. And when we will be attacked viciously, when they start throwing lies at us, every lie we get, we give back a fact. Every insult we get, we give back a nice word. Every time they turn their backs to us, we stretch out a hand to make sure that we work together with people of goodwill. We will not go as low as they are by spreading hate. We will bring hope. And most of all, we will bring, and today was a big inspiration for that, we will bring a feeling of spring in the hearts and minds of Europeans. A feeling that more is possible than just hopelessness. A feeling that there is a world beyond austerity. A feeling that more jobs can be brought to the table. A feeling that the rule of law is not a game, but is something everybody deserves. A feeling that democracy will be restored, will be strengthened, and democracy for everyone. A feeling that our new and young generation feels part of a construction that is a European construction that has brought peace for more than 70 years to this everly war-torn continent. I believe in Europe. I believe in social democracy. I want to say, long live the Party of Socialists in Europe. Long live the Party of Socialists and Workers in Spain, PSOE. Long live Europe.